Under the golden chandelier of their suburban Atlanta dining room, Ryan Carter stood tall, suit pressed, pride sharper than the silverware on the table. Across from him sat Emma, 8 months pregnant, one hand resting on her belly, the other trembling around a coffee cup. "Emma," he said coldly, sliding a folder across the polished table, "I think it's time we stop pretending. I want a divorce." The words sliced through the morning like broken glass. The air went still. Even the clock seemed to hold its breath. Standing by the doorway was Maya Grant, Emma's closest friend, and the woman Ryan now couldn't hide his glances from. Maya's perfume lingered in the room, a scent Emma didn't own. He smirked, straightening his tie. "You'll be fine, Emma. You never liked working anyway. I'll make sure you get something small." The humiliation burned deeper than the betrayal. Every guest at yesterday's baby shower had called them the perfect couple. Yet here in the house she decorated with love, he was ending their marriage like a business deal. Emma's lips barely moved. "And what about the woman standing in my doorway?" Ryan's eyes flickered, then hardened. "She understands me. She makes me feel alive." For a moment Emma just looked at him, not with anger, but with an eerie calm that unsettled him. Because deep inside she already knew something he didn't. He thought he was divorcing a helpless wife. He had no idea he was walking away from the woman secretly earning over $600,000 a year. As he turned his back, laughing with Maya, the narrator's voice sinks low. Steady, prophetic. He believed her silence was weakness. He never imagined it was strategy. But betrayal has a way of circling back. And the day will come when the man who asked for a divorce to marry his mistress will face the woman he abandoned, and it will bring him to his knees. This is the story of how a husband asked for a divorce to marry his mistress, unaware his betrayal would one day bring him to his knees. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth, and in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The morning sunlight spilled across the marble dining table of the Carter home in suburban Atlanta, painting gold across a scene that was about to shatter. Ryan Carter, tall, confident, dressed in a navy suit, tapped his finger against a crisp white folder. His wedding ring glinted under the light, a cold reminder of promises soon to be broken. Across from him sat Emma Carter, 8 months pregnant, wearing a soft gray sweater stretched over her round belly. Her eyes were tired but steady. The air smelled of fresh coffee and perfume she didn't own. "Emma," Ryan said, his voice sharp as glass, "we both know this marriage is over. I'm not happy, and I won't live a lie." He slid the folder toward her. Divorce papers. Emma's hand trembled around her coffee cup. Betrayal, humiliation, quiet divorce. Everything she feared was now sitting in front of her in neat legal print. "A divorce?" she asked quietly. "It's for the best," Ryan continued, voice cold, arrogant detachment coating every word. "You'll get something small, enough to survive. You don't work, Emma. You don't earn." Her chest tightened. The baby moved, as if reacting to the cruelty in the air. Behind him by the doorway stood Maya Grant, Emma's best friend since college. Dressed in silk, her perfume heavy in the room, her face wore the perfect mix of false concern and quiet satisfaction. "Ryan," Maya said softly, pretending kindness, "maybe this isn't the right time. Emma's pregnant." Ryan scoffed. "There's never a right time for the truth." Emma looked between them, something inside her clicking into place. The subtle looks, the late-night calls, the sudden distance. All of it finally made sense. "So that's what this is," she whispered. "You and her." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Don't twist things. Maya's been a friend. She understands me." Maya lowered her eyes, a fake apology forming on her lips. "Emma, please don't make this ugly." Ugly! The word echoed like thunder in Emma's mind. She had spent years building this home, the walls painted with dreams, the floors echoing laughter. And now she was being discarded like an accessory. She placed her cup down carefully, controlling her shaking hand. "You think I'm helpless," she said. "You think I need you to survive." Ryan folded his arms, pride swelling. Without me, Emma, you'd have nothing. Everything we have is because of my hard work. Her lips curved into something between pain and irony. Everything we have, Ryan. Are you sure about that? He blinked, confused. But she didn't explain. Not yet. Inside her mind, her thoughts moved fast. Strategic intelligence, quiet planning, self-control under fire, the private bank account under her maiden name, the clients from around the world who sent payments daily, the online firm she'd built quietly from her kitchen. She looked down at the papers again, her pulse slowing. For the first time, she felt calm. "I'll sign them," she said softly. Ryan frowned. "Just like that?" "Yes. You want freedom. You'll have it." He studied her face, searching for tears. There were none. Only a strange, unsettling peace. From the corner of the room, Karen Lewis, their nosy neighbor, peeked through the half-open window, phone in hand, pretending to water her plants. Her eyes widened. Public humiliation brewing already. Ryan gathered his briefcase, smirked, and turned toward the door. "I'll have my lawyer call you. Maya, let's go." Maya hesitated, offering a mock sympathetic smile. "I'll check on you later, okay?" Emma didn't answer. She just stared at the empty chair Ryan left behind. The sound of their car driving away filled the silence. She exhaled slowly, then opened her laptop, the screen flashing with unread messages. At the top was one email. "Payment received. $45,000 transfer confirmed." Her reflection glowed on the screen. A calm smile touched her lips. "You think I'm losing, Ryan," she whispered. "But I was already free." Outside, Karen Lewis whispered into her phone, "You won't believe what I just saw." Inside, Emma placed her hand on her stomach, whispering to her unborn child, "One day they'll understand what silence can build." The camera lingers on the open folder. Divorce agreement. Beside it, the laptop light blinks. New client message, Tokyo. The woman Ryan just dismissed as helpless is earning more than his entire firm. Emma closes the laptop, eyes narrowing slightly. Let him think he's won. The truth will come quietly, and it will bring him to his knees. The argument started with a scent that didn't belong to her. It was late afternoon inside the quiet Carter home. Emma stood by the laundry table, holding Ryan's shirt close to her face. It smelled faintly of floral perfume. Not hers, not even close. The scent carried the weight of another woman's touch. When Ryan walked in, his tie loosened, phone pressed to his ear. She turned toward him. "Who were you with?" she asked. His expression didn't flicker. He ended the call slowly. "Don't start, Emma. You're being paranoid again." The words might not have been spoken aloud, but they hung between them like smoke. She stared at him, the man she once trusted more than anyone. "I'm not imagining things, Ryan. You smell like someone else." He laughed, a sound sharp and hollow. "Maybe it's from the office. I work with people, remember? You wouldn't know much about that." That sting cut deeper than the perfume ever could. The baby kicked inside her belly. Emma steadied herself against the counter. "You don't have to keep hurting me to feel powerful," she said softly. Ryan walked past her, dismissive, picking up his jacket. "I'm not hurting you, Emma. You're just sensitive. That's your problem." From the open doorway, Maya Grant stepped in with a tray of pastries, voice coated in sweetness. "Ryan, I brought those files you asked for." Her eyes darted quickly to Emma, then away, like someone hiding a secret. "Emma, you look tired. Are you eating enough?" Emma smiled faintly, quiet power behind the calm. "I manage just fine. You seem very involved in my husband's schedule these days." Maya chuckled softly. "Well, you know how demanding he can be. Always needs things done perfectly." Ryan smirked. "That's why she's good at her job. Not everyone can keep up." Emma looked at them both, and for a second her heart went still. The way their eyes met, the unspoken chemistry, the subtle betrayal dressed as teamwork. She turned away, heading for the stairs, but her voice was steady. "I hope you both find what you're looking for." Maya opened her mouth to reply, but stopped when she saw the look in Emma's eyes. Cold, calm, unbroken. Upstairs, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open. The glow of the screen reflected the quiet strength in her face. Payment confirmations lined her inbox. Clients from New York, London, Tokyo, all sending projects to the woman her husband believed was jobless. Her hand hovered over her stomach as she whispered, "He needs to feel in control. Let him. I'll just keep working." Downstairs, Ryan's voice echoed, "She'll sign those papers soon. She's got nowhere to go." Maya's soft laugh followed. "You think so?" Ryan's voice turned proud again. "Without me, she's nothing." Upstairs, Emma closed her laptop gently. Her reflection in the dark screen stared back. A woman quietly reclaiming her power. One message blinked unread. "New partnership inquiry. Carter Industries supply project." She smiled faintly. "Let him think he's untouchable. The storm he's building will start inside his own house." The laughter was loud enough to cover the sound of her heart breaking. The Carter family dinner glowed beneath crystal chandeliers. Guests in elegant suits toasted, glasses clinking in perfect rhythm. Ryan Carter, dressed in his signature black tuxedo, stood at the head of the table with the confidence of a man performing for a crowd. His pregnant wife, Emma, sat beside him, silent, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "To success," Ryan declared, raising his glass, "and to everyone who stood by me through the hard times." The guests cheered. Only Emma noticed how his eyes lingered too long on Maya Grant, who sat 2 seats away, smiling sweetly. Her red dress caught the light, and every pair of eyes in the room. Without warning, Ryan turned toward Emma, his voice sharp enough to silence the room. "You know my wife's lucky," he said, smirking. "She doesn't have to worry about bills or work stress. She just stays home, spends, sleeps." Laughter rippled, awkward, confused. Humiliation flushed Emma's face. Her fork trembled in her hand. Harold Mills, an old family friend, tried to lighten the air. "Now, Ryan, that's not fair. She's carrying your child." Ryan shrugged. "Pregnancy isn't a job, Harold." The table went still. The arrogant detachment, the public disgrace, the mockery, all deliberate. Maya looked down, pretending embarrassment, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. Clara Stone, a community figure seated nearby, whispered to her friend, "Poor thing, she looks like she's about to cry." Emma didn't, not this time. She inhaled deeply, forcing her heartbeat to steady. The laughter faded. Even Ryan seemed unsure of what he'd expected. Maybe tears, maybe begging. But she only looked at him and smiled faintly. "You're right, Ryan," she said softly. "I am lucky." He blinked, thrown off balance. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she replied, voice calm, "you've given me the freedom to see things clearly." Her words landed like quiet thunder. Guests exchanged looks. Maya leaned forward. "She's just tired, Ryan. Maybe we should—" "Sit down, Maya," Emma interrupted gently. "I think we've all heard enough." The power in her tone was soft but solid. For a moment, even Ryan froze. Then he forced a laugh, trying to reclaim control. "You see what I deal with? Always dramatic." The dinner continued, but whispers replaced laughter. Phones slid discreetly from pockets. Karen Lewis, the neighbor, recorded the scene from her seat. Tomorrow the social media gossip would spread like wildfire. As the plates were cleared, Ryan leaned in close to Emma's ear. "You'll regret embarrassing me." "Maybe," she whispered back, "but you'll regret underestimating me." When the guests left, Emma remained seated, staring at the empty glass in front of her. The room still smelled of perfume, success, and betrayal. She placed her hand over her stomach again. "We'll be okay," she murmured to her unborn child, "even if it's just us." Her phone buzzed. A new message. "Payment received. $75,000 from Tokyo client." The screen's glow lit her face, calm and unbroken. Outside in the driveway, Maya's laugh floated through the air, and Ryan's voice followed, low and intimate. The door closed behind them. Emma stood at the window, watching their shadows disappear into the night. "Let them have their moment," she whispered. "It won't last." The reflection of her laptop screen shimmered against the glass, showing a new email subject line. Harper Consulting, Government Proposal. The same project Ryan's firm would soon beg to win. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, Every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel. You're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from? And what part of this story spoke to your heart? The memory hit Emma like a slap. The moment she saw Maya's red dress gleaming in the dining hall last night, she was dragged back to the first time they ever shared a secret. It was college dorm night, years ago. The two girls sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by textbooks and dreams. Maya Grant, loud and magnetic, laughed as she poured cheap wine into paper cups. "One day we'll run our own business," Maya said. "You'll handle the numbers, I'll handle the charm." Back then, friendship felt eternal. No envy, no rivalry. But the night ended with Maya whispering, "Promise me you'll never leave me behind." Emma had promised. She kept that promise until success found her first. Years later, Emma's online design startup took off. Clients came from New York, Paris, and Tokyo. Her quiet income grew, her confidence bloomed, and her private bank account slowly filled. Maya, who'd quit her job after too many failed ventures, began to visit often, smiling but asking more questions than normal. "You're killing it," Maya would say, smile not reaching her eyes. "You deserve every bit of this, Em. But be careful, money changes people." Slow reflection. Emma remembered every warning, every subtle remark. The day Maya had helped her organize paperwork, she'd seen a single invoice marked Harper Consulting. Maya had looked at it too long. "What's this?" "Just freelance work," Emma had replied quickly. Maya murmured. "You always were good with secrets." From that moment, the friendship began to twist. Maya's hidden jealousy grew roots. Later, during a wine night with Ryan, Maya had casually said, "Ryan, do you ever wonder if Emma hides things from you? She's different lately." Ryan had frowned, curious. "What do you mean?" "Nothing serious, just she works late, keeps her laptop close. Maybe it's nothing." That was all it took. The seed of suspicion planted neatly between husband and wife. Now, sitting at her desk, Emma saw the full picture. Maya's false concern, her fake sympathy, her quiet manipulation. Everything had been deliberate. Emma opened her laptop. There in her inbox was a forwarded message from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "She's telling him everything." Inside were screenshots. Maya's chat with Ryan. "She's been hiding money. She doesn't trust you. I'll help you find out what she's planning." Emma's breath caught. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was strategic sabotage. She leaned back in her chair, hand over her belly, whispering, "She wanted his attention. She can have it." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with clarity. "I don't need to expose her. I just need to keep working." Her phone buzzed again. A text from Maya herself. "Can we meet tomorrow? I think you deserve the truth." Emma stared at the message, expression unreadable. The reflection of her monitor lit her eyes like fire. "Tomorrow, Maya," she whispered. "You'll get it too." In another part of town, Ryan's phone glowed with a new notification. A bank alert connected to Harper Consulting. The storm had quietly begun. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house like a gunshot. Emma Carter, 8 months pregnant, froze at the threshold. Cardboard boxes lined the hallway. Her clothes, her books. Even the framed wedding photo now face down inside one. Ryan Carter stood near the stairs, tie loosened, expression cold and final. Maya Grant leaned casually against the doorway, arms folded, pretending guilt while hiding a smirk. "Ryan, what's going on?" Emma asked, voice trembling. "You're leaving," he said simply. "I can't live like this anymore. You've been lying to me. I checked the accounts." "What is Harper Consulting, Emma?" Emma blinked, realizing Maya had told him everything. "You went through my private emails?" "Don't turn this around," Ryan snapped. "You've been hiding money, pretending to be helpless while I worked myself to death." Maya stepped forward, tone dripping with false concern. "Ryan, maybe we should give her a chance to explain." "No," he cut her off. "She's had enough chances." Emma's hand instinctively went to her belly. "Ryan, please. Let's talk about this somewhere else. There's nothing to talk about. You're leaving this house today. The baby kicked sharply. Pain rippled through her stomach. She steadied herself against the wall. Where will I go? She whispered. That's not my problem anymore. He tossed an envelope toward her. There's money in there. Enough for a motel. Karen Lewis, the neighbor, appeared at the open doorway, holding a grocery bag, her voice small. Is everything okay? Ryan turned, fake smile plastered on. Just a little misunderstanding, Karen. You know how emotional pregnancy can make women. Karen frowned. She doesn't look fine, Ryan. I said she's fine, he snapped, voice harsh. Maya stepped in quickly, pretending to calm him. Karen, please. It's better if you leave. Karen hesitated, eyes filled with quiet pity, then walked away. Ryan dragged Emma's suitcase to the porch. I'll send the papers this week. Don't make a scene. Emma looked at him one last time, not as a wife, but as a stranger seeing the man who destroyed his own soul. You think this makes you strong, she said softly, but it only shows how afraid you are. He scoffed, turning away. Keep your lectures. I've moved on. Maya looped her arm around his. Come on, Ryan. You've done enough. Emma stepped into the sunlight, her body trembling, but her eyes steady. The neighbor's blinds twitched. Someone filmed quietly. She sat on the curb beside her suitcase, tears streaming silently. The afternoon breeze carried the echo of laughter from inside. Maya's voice, Ryan's reply. She wiped her face, exhaled deeply, then reached into her bag and pulled out the sealed envelope Mr. Wes Jordan, her lawyer, had given her weeks ago. She tore it open. Inside was a contract confirming a $2 million deal signed under Harper Consulting. Her lips curved faintly. He thinks he threw me out, she whispered, but he just set me free. As she stood to call a cab, her phone buzzed with a new message. Meeting confirmed. Government contract. Carter Industry Supply. Her heart stilled for a moment, realization dawning. His company, she whispered. The same empire that kicked her out would soon come knocking on her door. The elevator doors opened to a narrow hallway, lined with peeling paint and the faint smell of rain. Emma Carter, barefoot and 8 months pregnant, carried a single suitcase and a folder marked Confidential. Every step echoed like the memory of the home she had just been thrown out of. Inside her new one-bedroom apartment, the walls were bare, the air cold, and the silence overwhelming. She placed her suitcase down, exhaled, and pressed her hand gently on her belly. We're safe now, she whispered. That's all that matters. A knock startled her. It was Grace Daniels, an older woman from next door, wrapped in a floral robe, holding a plate of cornbread. You must be the new tenant, Grace said kindly. I saw you come in. You look exhausted, sweetheart. Emma smiled weakly. Just a long day. Grace studied her swollen belly, sensing the heaviness behind the words. You don't have to be alone, dear. We all start over somewhere. Emma thanked her softly. After Grace left, she sat on the edge of her new bed, a thin mattress on the floor, and opened her laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated her tired but determined eyes. Unread messages flooded in, clients from New York, London, and Tokyo, each confirming new projects for Harper Consulting. Her hands trembled as she typed responses, her body aching but her mind sharp. Slow reflection. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, she worked through the night. Freedom after betrayal had a strange rhythm, quiet but powerful. Every keystroke was a rebellion against everything Ryan had said. You're nothing without me. She remembered his words as if they were carved into her memory. Without my name, you'll fade. Yet here she was, signing contracts under her maiden name, Harper, the name he'd once mocked for sounding too ordinary. She paused to stretch, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen. Her phone vibrated. A text from Noah King, her downstairs neighbor, a single father who had helped carry her boxes earlier. Need help setting up your Wi-Fi? I used to fix networks before life went sideways. She smiled for the first time in days. Sure, come by tomorrow, she replied. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. In the soft hum of her laptop fan, she heard her own transformation beginning. Quiet power replacing despair. Patience turning into a weapon. Strategic intelligence guiding every move. The clock hit 3 a.m. She saved her progress and leaned back, whispering, He thinks he ended my story, but he just gave it a new chapter. Her email notification dinged again. Subject line: contract adjustment, Carter Industries supplier transfer. Her eyes widened. Carter Industries, Ryan's company. Grace's voice echoed faintly through the thin wall next door, humming an old gospel tune about justice and redemption. Emma closed her laptop slowly, her expression unreadable. Let's see how fate plays its cards, she murmured. Tomorrow Ryan would learn that the same firm he betrayed had quietly become his company's lifeline. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Emma Carter stepped through the doors, her belly round beneath a simple cream dress. The air smelled of old paper and polished wood. Cameras clicked faintly. The gossip had spread fast. The pregnant wife facing public divorce. At the front, Ryan Carter adjusted his suit jacket, flashing the smug smile of a man convinced he'd already won. Maya Grant sat beside him in a fitted blazer, pretending sympathy, but her eyes gleamed with triumph. Judge Thompson, stern and composed, cleared his throat. We're here to finalize the divorce between Ryan and Emma Carter. Emma took her seat calmly beside her lawyer, Mr. Wes Jordan, an older man with kind eyes and a steady voice. Ryan leaned slightly toward her, voice low and mocking. Let's make this quick, Emma. I have a lunch meeting with investors. She didn't look at him. Of course, she said softly. Time is money, right? The contrast between them was clear. One chasing control, the other holding quiet composure. Judge Thompson adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Carter, do you understand the terms presented? Yes, Your Honor, Emma replied, voice steady. Ryan's lawyer, Patrick Dean, stood holding the document. My client has offered a generous settlement. Mrs. Carter will receive basic support until after delivery. The words hung heavy. Basic support for a woman carrying his child. Lydia, the court clerk, glanced at Emma with quiet pity, while Dean Ward, the paralegal, whispered something to Patrick, grinning smugly. Ryan smirked. This is for the best. You can move on peacefully. Emma met his gaze for the first time. Peace isn't something you can give, Ryan. It's something you lose. A few people shifted in their seats. Even Judge Thompson's pen paused midair. Mr. Jordan leaned toward her, whispering, You can walk away stronger. Just sign it. Emma took the gold pen in her trembling hand, the same one Ryan had used to humiliate her in front of their friends weeks ago. She signed, the ink gliding like closure itself. Ryan exhaled, relief flooding his features. Finally, he stood, shaking hands with Patrick. Cameras flashed from the back of the room. Maya reached for his arm, pretending to help him gather his papers. Emma rose quietly. Congratulations, she said softly. You've won the show. Ryan frowned. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled faintly. You'll understand when the lights go out. Outside the courthouse, the air was warm, filled with the hum of traffic and whispers from onlookers. Emma stood beneath the wide stone steps, the city stretching behind her. She pressed a hand to her belly. We did it, she murmured. We're free now. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ava Morgan, her tech analyst ally. Contract accepted. Harper Consulting now registered as official supplier for Carter Industries. Emma's heart skipped. The timing was poetic. Behind her, Maya's laughter rang out, sharp and bright. See, I told you she'd sign. Emma turned slightly, voice calm, words deliberate. Enjoy your victory, Maya. It's the last one you'll get. That night, Ryan's company would receive an urgent notice. Their biggest supplier had changed ownership. The luxury rooftop restaurant glowed like a crown above Atlanta's skyline. Cameras clicked. Laughter sparkled like champagne bubbles. Ryan Carter and Maya Grant sat at the center table, surrounded by investors and socialites. To anyone watching, they looked like royalty celebrating a flawless empire. To us, Ryan said, raising his glass, to power, to freedom, and to winning. Maya smiled, clinking his glass. And to money. You always said power means nothing without it. The waiter poured another round of champagne. Reporters lingered nearby, whispering. One of them murmured, That's Ryan Carter, the CEO who left his wife for his assistant. Bold move. Ryan grinned, pretending not to hear. Maya leaned close. Ignore them. Soon they'll write about our new expansion. I talked to the accountants. We can move client reserves temporarily into the acquisition fund. It's legal? Enough. He hesitated. That's company money, Maya. Relax, she said, brushing his shoulder. You'll replace it before the audit. It's how real power works. He looked at her face, smiling, confident, dangerous, and nodded. The music swelled, drowning his conscience. Across the street at a small cafe, Emma Carter sat by the window with Ava Morgan. The glow from the rooftop glimmered on her laptop screen as she reviewed Carter Industries' financial records. Ava pointed at one line, eyes widening. They're transferring funds labeled as consulting expenses to an offshore account. Emma's tone was calm but razor-sharp. To Maya's name, Ava's jaw tightened. Do we expose them? Not yet, Emma said. Let them believe they're untouchable. The louder they celebrate, the harder they'll fall. Back at the rooftop, Maya scrolled through her phone. Look, honey, Harper Consulting just got another government contract. Funny how fast small companies rise these days? Ryan frowned slightly. Never heard of them. Maya smirked. Then you're not paying attention. The irony cut deep, but he didn't realize it. Harper Consulting, Emma's secret firm, was already taking over his empire one contract at a time. Charles Dane, one of Ryan's board allies, approached the table. Ryan, investors are worried. They saw the transfers. It looks bad. Tell them to trust me, Ryan snapped. I'm in control. Charles shook his head. No one believes that anymore. He walked away, leaving Ryan to simmer under the spotlight. Maya touched his arm softly. Don't mind him. You're a genius. They just envy you. But her eyes flickered. Cold, calculating. She was already texting another man under the table. The screen lit up with a message. Funds received. Transfer confirmed. CJ. The next morning, Ryan opened his email and froze. The subject line read, Urgent, Federal Audit Notification, Suspicious Financial Activity. His hands trembled. Maya stood behind him, pretending to be shocked, whispering softly, Don't worry, baby, I'll fix it. But as she turned away, the camera caught her faint smile reflected in the glass. Tomorrow, Ryan would discover that the woman he trusted most was the one who emptied his accounts and handed his downfall to fate on a silver tray. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the glass corridors of Carter Industries. Panic had replaced pride. Screens displayed falling stock prices. Employees whispered nervously as Ryan Carter stormed past, his face pale, his once confident stride replaced by anger and fear. Who leaked our financial transfers? He barked. Charles Dane, his senior board member, followed closely, holding a stack of reports. We don't know yet, but the auditors flagged an offshore transaction, linked to an account under Maya's signature. Ryan stopped cold. That's impossible. She only moves money when I approve it. Charles sighed. Then someone's using your name. Because it's signed with your digital key. The hallway fell silent. Ryan's chest tightened. His empire, the one he'd built on pride and control, was crumbling from the inside. Maya Grant appeared at the far end of the hall, sunglasses on, phone in hand, acting untouched by the chaos. Baby, relax, she said softly, ignoring the tension. It's a system glitch. I'll talk to accounting. Ryan's voice cracked. Maya, they're investigating us for embezzlement. Whispers spread among employees watching from behind glass. The once respected CEO now looked desperate. That night, Ryan sat in his dark office, staring at the skyline that used to make him feel powerful. The city lights looked colder now. He poured himself a drink, hands shaking. How did it all fall apart? He muttered. The door opened quietly. Maya walked in, her perfume filling the room. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're overreacting, she said, sitting on his desk. You're still Ryan Carter. Everyone will forgive you once the dust settles. He studied her carefully, noticing things he once ignored. Her new phone, her diamond bracelet, her growing distance. Maya, he said slowly, how much money did you move? Not much, she replied lightly. Just enough to protect us. He stood abruptly. Protect us or protect yourself? Her silence answered for her. Meanwhile, across town, Emma Carter watched from her office window as her own company, Harper Consulting, prepared new contracts. Ava Morgan handed her a file. We got another client today. Guess who they dropped? Carter Industries, Emma said softly without looking up. Ava smiled. They're panicking. Word is, an audit's coming. Emma closed the file gently. Then the truth is finally catching up. Back at Carter Industries, Ryan stared at his computer as a new email arrived. Federal audit notification. Immediate compliance required. His vision blurred. His empire was collapsing faster than he could breathe. He looked up, but Maya was gone. Only her perfume lingered in the room. Ryan opened his company account dashboard. The balance blinked. 0. He slammed his desk, shouting, Maya! From his phone, a message appeared. Don't call me. It's over. M. Tomorrow he would discover that the woman he destroyed his marriage for had vanished with every dollar he owned. And the law would come knocking next. The Carter Industries boardroom was a war zone in suits. Reporters crowded outside the glass doors, their cameras flashing through the blinds. The board sat in tense silence as Ryan Carter, exhausted and disheveled, slammed a folder on the polished mahogany table. This company is mine, he snapped. I built it. I will fix this. Charles Dane folded his arms. Fix what, Ryan? The empty accounts? The missing investors? Or the mistress who just transferred every dollar offshore? Ryan's jaw tightened. His voice cracked. Maya was framed. From the corner, Nina Cole, the company's legal head, dropped another folder. No, Ryan, she wasn't. We traced the accounts. She used your login credentials. The funds went to a shell company named Grant Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. Gasps filled the room. Phones buzzed with incoming notifications. News alerts were already spreading. Emma Carter's face appeared on the projection screen, displayed from a live investor video call. The room went silent. Her calm, poised image filled the space he once dominated. Good morning, everyone, she said. Her voice was steady, elegant. I'm here as the majority stakeholder in Harper Consulting. We've just acquired Carter Industries' largest contracts. Ryan froze. What are you doing, Emma? Protecting the jobs your arrogance endangered, she replied, and ensuring your employees don't pay for your greed. The board members murmured, torn between guilt and relief. Charles Dane looked down, then spoke quietly. Ryan, she's doing what you should have done months ago. Ryan's vision blurred with fury. You're all traitors, every one of you. Emma's expression softened, not with pity, but understanding. No, Ryan, this isn't betrayal. This is balance. Her calm tone struck harder than anger ever could. She continued, You left me thinking I was powerless, but you never realized silence doesn't mean weakness. It means strategy. Every word landed like a hammer. Outside the boardroom, reporters swarmed. Through the glass, flashes reflected off Ryan's pale face. The man who once basked in attention now looked trapped by it. Emma, please, he whispered into the mic, voice cracking. Don't take everything. Her answer was quiet but firm. I didn't take it, Ryan. You gave it away. The call ended. The screen went black. Moments later, the boardroom doors burst open. 2 federal agents stepped in. Ryan Carter? He turned slowly, face drained of color. You're under investigation for corporate fraud and embezzlement. You'll need to come with us. Charles Dane whispered to himself. It's over. As they placed the cuffs on Ryan's wrists, reporters outside shouted questions. Cameras captured his fall from power in real time. He looked back at the screen, the reflection of his wife's logo, Harper Consulting, glowing behind him. Tomorrow he would wake up in a holding cell, realizing that the woman he discarded now owned the empire that bore his name. And the only freedom left to him would be to beg for mercy. The police car door slammed behind Ryan Carter as flashing red and blue lights painted his pale face. Cameras surrounded him like vultures. The once celebrated CEO who flaunted wealth and power was now handcuffed, led through the lobby of his own company as employees whispered in disbelief. That's him, one security guard murmured. Unbelievable, another said. He used to walk in here like a king. Inside the crowd, Maya Grant stood in her designer coat, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She didn't move. She didn't speak. When Ryan's gaze found hers through the crowd, desperation flickered in his voice. Maya, tell them the truth. You know I didn't steal that money. She tilted her head slightly, her face calm, unreadable. I don't know what you're talking about, she said softly, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya, Ryan whispered, disbelief turning to dread. You're lying. I'm moving on, Ryan, she said, turning away. You should too. Hours later, Ryan sat alone in the holding cell, the gray walls pressed against him like the silence he used to weaponize. His phone vibrated once. A message from Maya. Hands trembling. He opened it. It's over. I met someone else. You'll figure things out. M. He dropped the phone. The sound echoed like finality. The woman he destroyed his marriage for had now destroyed him. Meanwhile, at Harper Consulting, Emma Carter watched the breaking news on her office TV. Ava Morgan entered with 2 cups of coffee. It's official, Ava said quietly. He's been denied bail for now. Maya's testifying against him. Emma didn't smile. She just nodded. Let justice run its course. We won't need to lift a finger. Charles Dane, who now consulted for Harper Consulting, added, The board's dissolving what's left of Carter Industries. The name's finished. Emma closed her laptop gently. No name built on cruelty survives. It collapses under its own lies. The room fell quiet. Even with victory near, Emma's expression stayed composed. No joy, just peace. Later that night, Maya sat in a luxury penthouse suite, laughing with a new man. Her phone buzzed again. Another transfer confirmation. He really was stupid, she said. Left everything in my name. Her new lover smirked. And now you're rich. Maya raised her glass. To freedom. But as the night grew quiet, her phone vibrated again. This time the screen read, Federal investigation. Fraud and money laundering linked to Maya Grant. Her smile froze. The next morning, her penthouse door burst open. 2 agents entered. Maya Grant, you're under arrest. As they led her out, reporters shouted, Is it true you betrayed Ryan Carter and stole from him? She looked up at the flashing cameras, trembling now. He deserved it, she whispered, but her voice cracked. In the next scene, the world that once mocked Emma would watch her rise publicly, while the man who once claimed to own everything would fall to his knees before her. The ballroom of the Atlanta Grand Hilton shimmered beneath chandeliers. Hundreds gathered for the Harper Foundation Gala, a night celebrating women in business and financial independence. Cameras flashed, capturing Emma Carter as she stepped onto the red carpet in a white gown that glowed under the lights. Calm, graceful, untouchable. Across the street, Ryan Carter stood behind a cluster of reporters, hidden under a gray coat. His face looked thinner, drained. Since his release on bail, he'd lost his company, his fortune, and every friend who once cheered him on. The only thing left was regret. Inside, the announcer's voice echoed, Tonight, we honor Emma Carter, founder of Harper Consulting, a symbol of resilience and empowerment. The crowd erupted in applause. Emma walked toward the stage as Ava Morgan and Charles Dane smiled proudly. Karen Lewis, their longtime neighbor who once pitied Emma, whispered to her friend, Can you believe that's the same woman he humiliated? As Emma stood on stage, her speech began. 3 years ago, I lost everything, or so I thought. But sometimes losing what breaks you is the first step to finding what builds you. Her voice trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from memory. The audience listened in silence. I built this foundation to help women rebuild, because every scar can become strength. Applause thundered again. Cameras flashed. Outside, Ryan watched the broadcast on a large screen through the window. Her words pierced deeper than any courtroom sentence. Karen Lewis spotted him through the glass. She whispered, He's here. Reporters turned. The crowd shifted. Suddenly, Ryan was exposed under the bright hotel lights. Whispers grew. Is that Ryan Carter? Didn't his mistress get arrested? He lost everything. Ryan tried to back away, but the cameras followed him. The same media that once celebrated his success now recorded his humiliation. Inside, the glass doors opened. Security hesitated, unsure whether to remove him. Emma turned, meeting his eyes from across the room. Ryan stepped forward, trembling, ignoring the murmurs. Emma, his voice cracked. Please, I'm sorry. You were right. About everything. The room fell silent. He dropped to his knees before her. The man who once called her worthless, now broken and begging for forgiveness. Please, Emma, just forgive me. Her face remained calm, her voice gentle. I forgive you, Ryan, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your darkness any longer. He sobbed, head bowed. She added softly, but you can't return. My peace isn't yours to destroy again. Reporters' cameras flashed as Ryan was led out by security, tears streaking down his face. Outside, he looked up at the billboard glowing above the hotel. Emma's face beside the words, Harper Foundation, Rebuilding Lives. His lips trembled as he whispered, She rebuilt everything I destroyed. In the next scene, he would face the final reckoning, the silence of a man left behind, watching the woman he once belittled rise to heights he could never reach again. Rain poured across the cracked window of a tiny downtown apartment where Ryan Carter sat alone at a wobbly table. The once powerful CEO now lived surrounded by boxes, unpaid bills, and faded newspapers bearing his downfall on their front pages. His hands trembled as he watched Emma Carter's face appear on the small television, smiling gracefully at a global conference. The chyron read, Harper Foundation expands to 15 countries, empowering women through financial independence. Her calm voice carried through the static. Every ending can become a beginning if you let pain teach you. Ryan's lips quivered. That used to be my line, he whispered bitterly. He looked down at his empty wallet. No cards, no money. Just a folded photo of him and Emma from happier days. A knock echoed from the door. Karen Lewis, his old neighbor, stood outside with groceries. She stared at him, pity softening her face. You look thinner, Ryan. Have you been eating? He shrugged. I'm fine. Emma didn't destroy you, she said quietly. You did that to yourself. He turned away, voice breaking. She forgave me, Karen, but she walked away. Do you know how that feels? Karen sighed, setting the groceries down. Yes, it feels like consequences. She left without another word, leaving silence heavier than judgment. Ryan sat down, staring at the rain-streaked glass. His reflection looked older, defeated. His luxury cars were gone, his penthouse repossessed, and his friends stopped calling. Even Maya Grant, the mistress who betrayed him, now served a sentence for fraud. He whispered to himself, Everyone I used me back. That's how karma works. A small voice from the television broke his thoughts. Emma, being interviewed live. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, she said. It's about freeing yourself from hate so it can't control you. Her tone wasn't bitter. It was peaceful, strong, whole. Ryan sank into the chair, tears forming in his tired eyes. For the first time, he understood what she meant. His punishment wasn't prison. It was watching her thrive in the light while he faded in the dark. As the segment ended, the reporter asked Emma, If your ex-husband were watching this right now, what would you say to him? Emma paused. The crowd fell silent. Then she smiled softly. I'd say, thank you, because losing him taught me how to find myself. The audience erupted in applause. Ryan stood frozen, staring at her image, whispering through the static, You did find yourself, and it brought me to my knees. In the next and final scene, he would face her once more, not in anger, but in humility, closing the circle where betrayal birthed redemption and forgiveness became the final victory. The Grand Atlanta Civic Auditorium glimmered under the spotlight of the Harper Foundation Global Awards. Reporters filled every row, cameras flashing like lightning. The crowd waited for the woman who had risen from betrayal to build an empire of hope. Emma Carter. The host's voice echoed proudly. Tonight, we celebrate a woman whose strength turned heartbreak into legacy. Emma Carter. Applause thundered as Emma stepped onto the stage in a soft ivory gown, radiant beneath the chandelier light. The entire hall stood, except one figure at the back. Ryan Carter. His hair was gray at the edges, his once flawless suit now wrinkled and loose. He looked smaller than anyone remembered. Hands shaking, he clutched an envelope, his last apology. Emma! His voice cracked through the hall. The applause faded. Heads turned. The cameras whirred to life. Gasps spread like wildfire. Emma froze mid-step, her expression calm but guarded. Security moved, but she raised her hand slightly, a quiet signal to let him speak. Ryan walked toward the stage, trembling, broken. "I came here tonight, not to cause trouble, just to say I'm sorry," he said, voice shaking. "You were the heart I mistook for weakness." His eyes glistened. "I lost everything. The company, the house, the money. Even the woman I destroyed my marriage for turned on me. I thought power meant control, but it meant nothing without you." The hall fell silent. Even the camera stopped moving. Emma's gaze softened slightly, not with pity, but with understanding. She stepped forward slowly, her voice steady. "Ryan, I don't hate you. I forgave you a long time ago. Not because you deserved it, but because I needed peace." He fell to his knees, voice breaking. "Please, Emma, just forgive me in front of them. Let them know I wasn't always a monster." She held the microphone gently, her words carrying through the hall. "Forgiveness is not return. You cannot rebuild what you burned with arrogance. My peace is not yours to destroy again." Gasps echoed again. Tears streamed down Ryan's face as flashes from cameras lit the moment. The once powerful husband kneeling before the woman he had once humiliated. Karen Lewis, seated in the front row, whispered to her friend, "This is justice, the kind that teaches without revenge." Suddenly, blue lights flashed across the glass walls. The sound of police radios echoed through the lobby. 2 federal agents entered briskly. "Ryan Carter," one said firmly, "you're under arrest for new charges of embezzlement and perjury. We have evidence from Maya Grant's final deposition." The hall went dead silent. Ryan's lips parted, disbelief washing over his face. He turned toward Emma one last time. "Emma," he whispered. Her eyes didn't waver. "Justice always arrives, Ryan. Sometimes late, but never lost." The agents cuffed him as cameras flashed wildly. The same reporters who once praised his empire now filmed his final downfall. As he was led out under the flashing lights, his tearful eyes met the glowing billboard outside the window. Emma's face beside the words, "Harper Foundation, Rebuilding Lives." He whispered, voice trembling, "You rebuilt everything I destroyed, and it brought me to my knees." In the quiet hours after the arrest, Emma would face her final reflection. Not as a victim or avenger, but as a woman finally free to live without looking back. Morning sunlight poured through the glass walls of the Harper Foundation headquarters overlooking Atlanta. The city buzzed below, but inside peace reigned. Emma Carter stood beside a group of young women, all former victims of betrayal and loss, now entrepreneurs under her mentorship. She smiled softly as Ava Morgan entered with a tablet. "Another grant approved," Ava said. "This one's for a shelter in Chicago, under your name." Emma nodded, her eyes calm. "Good, let it stand for second chances." She walked toward the stage where the foundation's new motto shimmered across a banner. "Turn pain into power." Reporters took photos as Emma addressed the room. "Years ago, I thought losing everything was the end, but it was the beginning. We rise not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove ourselves right." Applause filled the hall. Outside, a quiet memorial garden stood. A plaque read, "Forgiveness is freedom, E.C." As Emma looked out the window, a gentle smile touched her face. The world she rebuilt was peaceful now, and for the first time, the past no longer hurt. He lived in silence. She lived in purpose, and that became her final victory. Emma's foundation logo glows against the skyline. Unaware the wife he divorced had just won a $500 million contract, he mocked her as a failure to marry his mistress. What she did next crushed them both. He didn't just divorce her. He stood in the narrow hallway of their small house, divorce papers in one hand and car keys in the other, and told her she was nothing while his soon-to-be new bride, Tessa, was already waiting for him so they could plan their wedding. That night, Emma Hayes stepped out of her workshop, still smelling of metal and machine oil, the weight of a locked drawer behind her, the same drawer that held a finalized $500 million engineering contract, signed in her name alone and protected by a strict NDA. She was tired, fragile, and still foolishly hoping her husband might one day be proud of her work. Instead, she found Mark blocking the hallway, a stack of legal papers already bearing his signature. "It's done," he said with a smirk, waving them like a victory flag. "I'm moving on with someone who actually has a future. Tessa and I are planning the wedding. You have nothing, Emma, no job, no income, just your little toys." He thought he was discarding dead weight. He thought his mistress was an upgrade. He thought the divorce would set him free. What he never imagined was this. The woman he had just dismissed as a failure was the lead engineer behind a $500 million project. A woman who had already locked away every contract, every email, and every ugly receipt she needed. Not just to walk away safely, but to sit in a future courtroom with her lawyer at her side and watch his carefully built new life start to crack in front of everyone. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Emma's quiet genius be ignored all over again. When you hit that button, you stand with every partner who was mocked, every mind underestimated, and every woman planning her silent comeback. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The moment the lock clicked, Emma Hayes, 31, quiet in manner but brilliant in mind, felt fear and triumph crash together inside her chest. Her private workshop sat behind a heavy sliding door at the very back of the small house she shared with her husband. To visitors, it was the storage room. To Mark, it was that place where Emma hides. Only Emma knew it was the heart of her life's work. Today, it held proof that her life had already changed. The overhead strip lights hummed on. For one full second, she couldn't breathe. On her steel desk lay a folder so thick it almost bowed. On the front, in bold black letters, $500,000 million contract. Finalized underneath, in clean type, Emma L. Hayes, lead engineer, Modular Structural Innovations Limited. She ran her fingers over the letters. Limited, the company she had quietly registered 3 years ago using her inherited workshop as its legal address. No shared accounts, no co-owners, no husband's name on anything, by careful design. For years, she worked alone. No investors, no applause, not even support from the man she married. Just late nights, worn-out pencils, prototypes that failed more than they worked, and a stubborn fire in her chest that refused to go out. The workshop had been her father's before it was hers, his only real asset when he died. No land, no savings, no stocks, just this one space and a lifetime of calloused hands. People left money. He left tools, scribbled notebooks, and a belief that his daughter's mind could build what others only imagined. His presence still clung to the room, the smell of old wood, the dent on the metal table where he'd once dropped a hammer, the faded equation he'd chalked on the wall and never bothered to wipe off. Every time she walked in, it felt like stepping back into their world. Emma laid a trembling palm on the folder. She, the wife everyone assumed was playing with gadgets, had just secured a global engineering deal worth $500 million. Behind her, in full assembly, stood the proof. A modular, eco-structural system made of compact panels that locked together like puzzle pieces. Buildings that could be assembled faster, withstand extreme weather, and cut energy use in half. A lifetime of quiet work, finally seen. Memory rose up, clear and sharp. A much younger Emma sat on the same concrete floor, hair messy, fingers sticky with glue, holding up a crooked wooden bridge. Her father crouched beside her, eyes soft with pride. "One day," he'd said gently, tapping her forehead, "they'll pay you for the way this works, not for the way you look or smile or please anyone else." Back then, she just grinned. Now she understood. Emma exhaled slowly and opened the folder. Page after page, signatures, approvals, project phases, international partners, payment schedules, stared back at her. At the back, one document sat stamped in dark red. Strict NDA, no personal disclosure until public announcement. No discussion of contract terms, project scope, or projected valuation with any non-cleared individual, including close family, until official release. Legal and financial penalties apply. The words were sharp, binding, heavy. They were also why she'd swallowed every boast she could have made at home. Her husband, Mark Hayes, 33, confident, charming, a construction supplies salesman who loved being the loudest voice in any room, had no idea that his impractical wife had beaten out major firms and won the biggest contract of the decade. He thought her work was a harmless hobby. He couldn't have been more wrong. She placed the NDA on top and pressed her hand on it, acknowledging what it demanded. Silence, even at home, even with her husband, even when it stung. "He'll never know," she whispered, voice barely louder than the hum of the lights. "Not unless I decide he should." There was no bitterness, only quiet power. She slid the folder into the bottom drawer of her desk, turned the key, and listened to the metallic click. Final, certain. Then she slipped the key onto the small chain around her neck, tucked beneath her t-shirt, where Mark never bothered to look. Her phone buzzed harshly against the steel. Emma glanced at the screen. Mark calling. She didn't move. The vibration stopped, then started again, and again, and again. The call log flashed up when she touched the screen. 25 missed calls from her husband before 8 in the morning. Her stomach tightened, not with fear, but with an old familiar recognition. Mark only called like this when he needed something, not when he cared how she was. She set the phone down. Her gaze cooled, not from rage, but from sudden, deep clarity. Something was wrong. Whatever this was, whatever storm he was dragging toward her, it was already shaking the ground beneath her feet. A sharp, urgent knock sounded at the front door. Too fast, too forceful, rattling faintly through the house and into the workshop. Mark Hayes, it seemed, wasn't going to stay on the other side of the phone. The workshop door flew open so hard the hinges protested. Emma spun around, heart jumping, as Mark Hayes stormed inside with the energy of a man who believed the world owed him explanations. 33, broad-shouldered, quick-tempered. Mark always entered rooms like they already belonged to him. Even this one, the only space in the house he had never truly understood. His face was flushed, either from anger or from rushing, probably both. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" he snapped, chest rising and falling fast. "I called you 25 times, Emma." She steadied her breathing, shifting so her body blocked his view of the locked bottom drawer. "I was working," she said, voice even. Mark's eyes swept over the workshop. Wires, sketches, scattered tools. The large emerald green prototype half hidden beneath a fitted tarp. To him, it all looked like clutter, like a child's project that had taken over adult space. He snorted. "Working? Emma, this isn't work. This is you playing with your toys again." The words landed like cold water, familiar, overused, worn into her. She didn't flinch this time. He always used that tone when her dreams didn't center him, when her focus wasn't on applauding his efforts or listening to his complaints about clients. He strode farther into the room, pacing like a manager delivering a warning, not a husband speaking to his wife. "You need to stop hiding in here. It's embarrassing. Real adults get real jobs. I told you last year, you should have shut all this down and taken something steady, something that actually pays." Emma's eyes flicked for the briefest second to the drawer with the $500 million contract and NDA. The urge to laugh almost rose in her throat, bitter and sharp. She swallowed it down. She couldn't tell him. Not yet. The NDA wasn't just ink. It was her entire company's future. She had signed it with full understanding. No disclosure, no bragging, no casual mentions over dinner, not to spouses, not to friends, not even to Mark, who would be the first person to turn her success into a weapon if things ever soured. "Is everything all right?" she asked, keeping her tone calm, buying time, praying he wouldn't walk closer to the desk. If he opened that drawer and forced the truth out, she'd be the one in breach, not him. Mark scoffed, offended that she'd even ask. "I came to tell you I'm going to work early. Big day, important clients, clients with actual money." His gaze slid across the room again, dismissive. "Unlike this." Her chest ached. Another memory, older, sharper, rose to the surface. 2 years earlier, bills spread across their small living room table. Rent notice on top. Emma at the corner, laptop open, polishing a grant proposal for what would later become Modular Structural Innovations Ltd. Mark had walked in holding a printed job listing. "Could you just be normal for once?" he'd said. Apply for a stable office role? This engineering thing is never going to pay off. We need real income, Emma, not your experiments. Back then, she'd lowered her gaze, folded her ambitions smaller to keep the peace. Now she knew the cost of that silence. The memory faded, and she was back in the workshop with the same man, the same dismissive look, the same impatience etched into his features. Emma forced her face to stay calm. Arguing wouldn't help. The NDA bound her. His ego had never needed an excuse. Mark checked his watch dramatically. Anyway, don't wait up tonight. Might be a long one. Start of something big, you know? He turned toward the door. That was when she saw it. A faint smear on his collar. Light pink. Lipstick. Her whole body went still. Her first instinct reached for any excuse. Paint, maybe, or a smudge from a colored folder. But Mark didn't work with paint. And she didn't own a lipstick in that shade. She barely wore any at all. The smear had a slight shine. Dust didn't shine. Dust didn't leave clean, curved edges. Mark noticed her staring. "What?" he said, glancing down and brushing his collar with forced casualness. "This? Probably from some samples at the office." Samples didn't look like someone's mouth had been there. Emma said nothing. The NDA kept her from revealing her triumph, but it didn't explain away the hollow feeling forming in her chest. She simply nodded and stepped aside, letting him pass without another question. Mark walked out of the workshop without so much as a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the air heavier than before. Emma stood alone, heart beating in the quiet. She moved toward her desk and rested her hand on the locked drawer, grounding herself on the contract's solid reality. The lipstick stain had carved a new thin line inside her, small but deep. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a long time, and now the surface cracks were finally starting to show. Far down the hallway, his muffled voice floated back through the partly open front door, along with a sound that did not belong in their house at all. A light, unfamiliar laugh. A woman's. By mid-morning, the unease in Emma's chest refused to quiet. Mark had rushed out so fast he'd left a brown envelope on the kitchen table. Documents for a client meeting, judging by the logo in the corner and his hurried scribble. Need for 11 a.m. pitch. Bringing it to him was the reasonable thing to do. That was what she told herself as she drove. It wasn't jealousy, she insisted. It wasn't the lipstick. It wasn't the sound of that strange, light laughter drifting through the front door as he left. It was simply the responsible choice. But her hands tightened on the steering wheel anyway. The building's glass doors swallowed her reflection as she stepped through them. Inside, the air was cool and crisp. Phones rang. Printers whirred. People moved with purpose from desk to desk. Emma clutched the envelope a little closer. At the front desk, the receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. Before Emma could speak, a voice floated from the hallway. "Oh, you must be Emma." Emma turned. The woman walking toward her was exactly the type people noticed. Late 20s, about 29, sleek dark hair, a fitted blouse and pencil skirt, heels that clicked confidently on the floor. Her lipstick was a soft pink. The same shade Emma had seen on Mark's collar. "I'm Tessa," she said, extending her hand. "Tessa Clark. I work with Mark." Her smile was warm, but there was a glint behind it. "He talks about you all the time." The way she lingered on you felt deliberate. Emma shook her hand. The perfume hit her first. Light, sweet, familiar now that she recognized it from Mark's shirt the night before. "I'm just dropping off some documents he forgot," Emma said, raising the envelope. "Oh, you're so thoughtful," Tessa replied with a soft laugh, her fingers brushing the edge of Mark's desk as they walked toward it. "He gets so distracted in the mornings. Mind always racing. So many things he's trying to juggle." Her tone made distracted sound like a compliment. Emma's stomach pulled tight. Tessa stopped at Mark's workstation and set her hand on the back of his chair with the ease of someone who did it often. "He's out in a client meeting," she said. "Important one. You know how he gets, can't sit still when he feels something big coming." "Right," Emma said quietly. "He mentioned he had a busy day." "Busy is kind of his default setting," Tessa said, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "We're usually here late together. Early mornings, late nights." Her fingers tapped the desk near 2 coffee cups, still sitting side by side. Same brand, same order, one still slightly warm. It's easier when someone understands your rhythm. The words sounded harmless on the surface. Underneath, they weren't. Emma's chest tightened. She didn't want to jump to conclusions. People worked late. Co-workers brought each other coffee. None of that was illegal, but Tessa's tone, Tessa's small, knowing pauses, the lipstick, the perfume. Pieces were starting to lean toward each other, waiting to connect. Two employees walked past the doorway behind them. One leaned toward the other. Does she not know? The whisper slipped out, just barely above the noise. Emma's shoulders went rigid. The two co-workers noticed her stillness and quickly moved down the hall, eyes forward, faces blank. Tessa's smile stretched a little wider, like she had heard the whisper too and chosen not to care. Some people keep secrets to protect others, she said lightly, reaching for the envelope in Emma's hands without asking. I'll give this to him. He's lucky you brought it. Emma let it go. The envelope, the moment, the illusion. Her mind scrambled through memories. Mark turning his phone face down, his sudden late nights, his defensiveness, the lipstick, the perfume, the whisper, the way Tessa's hand lingered on his chair. Thank you, Emma managed, though her throat felt tight. Of course, Tessa said. Mark is fortunate. Not everyone would go out of their way like this. That kind of devotion is rare. The word devotion landed like a small blade. Emma stepped back, needing air. The office, with its bright lights and neutral carpets, suddenly felt suffocating. She turned toward the glass doors. Just before pushing them open, she glanced back. Tessa had already settled into Mark's chair, turning slightly side on, fingers lazily tracing the edge of his keyboard. She stared at the empty space where his body usually sat and smiled like she was waiting for him to come back to her desk, not theirs. Emma pushed through the doors, the cool air of the lobby giving way to the harsher heat outside. Her phone buzzed in her hand as she crossed the threshold. A new text message flashed across the screen from an unknown number. The preview line read only, "If you're Emma, you deserve to know the truth about Mark." Emma didn't open the message right away. Her thumb hovered over the screen, but her mind was still caught in the image of Tessa in Mark's chair, the sound of that whisper in the hallway. She slipped the phone into her bag, telling herself she'd read it later, when she was calmer, when she wasn't standing in a parking lot outside her husband's workplace with her heart lodged in her throat. But the universe, or fate, or simple bad timing wasn't finished with her yet. As she moved toward a side exit that led to the staff parking area, Emma pushed against a heavy door and froze. A voice drifted through the gap. Sharp, too familiar. She really thinks he's loyal. That's adorable. Tessa. The words landed on Emma like a slap. Emma stopped, letting the door ease back before it could reveal her. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She pressed herself lightly against the wall, not planning to eavesdrop but suddenly unable to move. Another voice, quieter, nervous. Tessa, keep your voice down. What if she hears you? Tessa laughed softly, low and confident. Maybe she should hear. Might finally stop bringing him his forgotten files like a good little wife. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Emma's feet. Her fingers curled against the cool metal of the door. So it wasn't just coffee, it wasn't just late nights, it wasn't just her imagination. Tessa wasn't speaking like a helpful coworker. She was speaking like someone who believed she had already taken Emma's place. Emma swallowed hard and stepped back, leaving the door closed. She didn't want to hear more, but the voices floated down the hallway anyway. He said he's filing soon, Tessa added, voice dripping with casual cruelty. Once that's done, we can stop pretending. The other woman whispered something Emma couldn't make out. Too soft, too hurried. Chairs moved. Footsteps faded. Emma stood there, rooted to the spot. Then slowly she turned away and walked toward the main exit instead, her vision blurring around the edges. She needed air. Any air that wasn't shared with Tessa's perfume. The automatic doors opened. Outside, the bright light of late afternoon hit her eyes, but none of it touched the cold knot forming in her chest. On the drive home, Tessa's words looped relentlessly. She really thinks he's loyal? That's adorable. He said he's filing soon. The unknown message from earlier flashed in her mind. At a red light, hands shaking, she finally pulled out her phone and opened it. Unknown number. If you're Emma, you deserve to know the truth about Mark. I've seen him with the woman from his office. This isn't a rumor. I have dates, photos, and receipts. I can't stand watching you be lied to. Attached were thumbnails of screenshots and blurry photos. Mark and Tessa leaving a hotel, sitting too close at a bar, his hand on her waist in the dim light of a restaurant. Emma's throat closed. She didn't recognize the number. There was no name, just a small note at the bottom. Please don't ask who I am. I need my job, but you need the truth. All afternoon, the words and images pressed against the inside of her skull. By the time she reached home, the sun had started to slide lower, casting long shadows across their living room. She sat on the edge of the couch, phone in her hand, photos open, proof staring back at her. Hours later, the front door finally opened. Mark stepped inside. Late, very late. His hair was mussed, his shirt wrinkled, and the scent that drifted in ahead of him made Emma's lungs seize. Tessa's perfume, the same one from the office, the same one from his collar, the same one that seemed to cling to his skin now, layered over faint cologne. He dropped his keys carelessly on the table. Long day, he muttered, not looking at her. Don't start anything. Emma stepped forward anyway, heart pounding, but voice surprisingly steady. Mark, she said, is there someone else? He froze. A moment stretched long and thin. Then he turned, eyes narrowing as if she'd insulted him. Someone else? He repeated, scoffing. Why would I need someone else when I have a wife who doubts everything I do? I don't doubt everything, she said softly, but you're always gone. You come home late. You smell like hard work? He cut in, voice sharp. You wouldn't understand that. Not with your little projects. He flicked his hand toward the hallway leading to her workshop as if swatting away a fly. Her heart cracked at the word. Projects. Her life's work. Her $500 million contract, reduced to a hobby in a single syllable. I'm serious, Mark, she tried again. Please, just tell me the truth. If there's someone who believes in me, he snapped. Someone who doesn't drag me down. Someone who thinks I'm capable of more than this. He gestured around the house as if the life they'd built together were cheap wallpaper he was tired of looking at. The blow stole her breath. He grabbed his jacket again, clearly done with the conversation. I don't have time for this. I'm going out. The door slammed so hard the frame shook. The house fell utterly silent. Emma stood in the hallway, the unknown message still open on her phone, photos staring up at her like witnesses. Her legs felt weak. Slowly, she walked to her workshop, pushed open the cold metal door, and went straight to her desk. She laid her hand on the drawer holding the $500 million contract. He had no idea that the woman he just dismissed as nothing was the one who had already secured a future most people would never touch. She couldn't reveal it, though. Not yet. Not without risking everything she'd built. Her phone buzzed again, breaking the quiet. Another message, this time from a second unknown number. On the screen appeared a single sentence. If he's already talking about filing, you should prepare yourself. He's more serious than you think. The days that followed blurred into each other. Cold dinners, slammed doors, Mark coming home later and later. Emma didn't confront him again. Instead, she quietly forwarded the anonymous screenshots and messages to a private email folder, and after a long night of shaking hands and deep breaths, to a lawyer recommended by one of the senior engineers on the project board. Just in case, she'd written. She hadn't used the word divorce. Not yet. Mark, meanwhile, acted like nothing needed fixing, except her. By the end of the week, the storm finally crashed through the front door. It burst open with a force that rattled the frames on the walls. Emma flinched before she even looked up from the notes she'd been scribbling in her workshop. Mark stormed in, gripping a thick stack of papers, jaw clenched, eyes bright with ugly determination. He didn't even bother to close the door behind him. Emma, he barked, come here. We're doing this now. The finality in his tone made her chest tighten. She wiped her hands on a cloth, though they were already clean, and stepped into the hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last. He waved the papers like a flag. It's done, he said, a triumphant smirk twisting his mouth. I already signed. You just need to add your name. Emma's gaze dropped to the top page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Her fingers went numb. Divorce, she whispered, even though the word was staring right at her. Mark crossed his arms, unbothered by the way her world had just cracked. Don't act surprised. Let's stop pretending this marriage works. You're stuck in your fantasies. I'm done waiting for you to grow up. Her throat tightened. She wasn't silent because she agreed. She was silent because she was pinned between two brutal truths, the NDA and the man in front of her, the contract, the project, the company. Years of work, the promise she'd made to protect it all. Mark mistook her silence for weakness. He stepped closer, dropping his voice to a cold whisper. Face it, Emma, you're going nowhere. You have no business, no real income, no achievements anyone cares about. He jerked his head toward the workshop. Just toys. Toys, her invention had already been valued in writing at $500 million, but to keep it, she had to keep quiet. She thought of telling him, of throwing the truth in his face, of watching his expression shatter. But if she broke the NDA, the deal could collapse. Her team would suffer. Years of sacrifice, hers and her late father's, would be wasted. She opened her mouth. Only a shaky breath came out. Mark smirked, reading it as surrender. Good. Sign it. He straightened, confidence swelling. I'm moving on with someone who actually has a future, not a dreamer. The name arrived before she could stop it. Tessa? She whispered. His eyes flickered, just for a second, before he recovered. I'm getting married again. Quickly. Tessa deserves better than waiting around while you cling to this mess. He gestured vaguely around the house. We're already planning the wedding. Something real, something beautiful, something I can finally be proud of. The words almost knocked her to her knees. He wasn't just leaving. He wasn't just cheating. He was discarding her for the woman who had laughed about her in office hallways. A pen clattered at her feet. He dropped it on purpose. Sign, he snapped. Don't make this messy. You know you can't afford a fight. You have nothing in your name. No savings, no real job. His gaze flicked to her worn jeans and simple t-shirt. Be smart for once. Those words landed deeper than any insult before. He truly believed she was nothing. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. She saw her father's hands guiding hers. The prototypes stacked in the workshop. The contract locked safely away. The email her lawyer had sent that morning. Do not discuss your project with him yet. Document everything. Let him reveal who he is. She inhaled slowly and opened her eyes. I'm not signing anything tonight, she said softly. His jaw jumped. Excuse me? I'll have my lawyer look at it first. The word lawyer made a flash of unease cross his face. He hid it quickly behind a scoff. Fine, he bit out. Do what you want, but this is happening, with or without your performance. He snatched the papers away from her and slammed them down on the small console table by the wall. I'm late. Tessa's waiting. We've got a wedding to plan. He grabbed his keys and walked out, slamming the door so hard the pictures rattled again. The house fell quiet, like it was exhaling after being punched. Emma stood there in the hallway, the divorce papers lying crooked on the table, her hands trembling. After a long moment, she picked them up, carried them into her workshop, and laid them carefully beside the drawer that held the $500 million contract. One stack represented the future he was choosing. The other, the future he had never believed she could have. She rested her palm on the locked drawer, drawing strength from the solid wood, from the truth he still didn't know. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She wiped at the tears she hadn't realized were falling and picked it up. A message from Tessa. Tessa, he's mine now. Move on. Emma's breath caught. Just below it, another notification appeared, this time from the project board's secure channel, the one that never pinged without reason. Subject line, mandatory final review. Your presence required. The timing was brutal, or perfect, depending on which future she chose to step into. And months from this night, after signatures were inked and the divorce was final, Mark would stand beside Tessa as her husband, convinced he had traded up, mocking the failure he believed Emma to be, with no idea what was coming for them both. The sob tore out of Emma before she could stop it, raw, sharp, and deep enough to shake her entire body. The door had barely stopped vibrating from Mark's exit. The words, "He's mine now." "Move on," from Tessa, still glowing on her phone screen when everything inside her finally broke. She sank to the workshop floor, knees hitting the cold concrete, the divorce petition and attached documents sliding from her hand and fanning out around her like wreckage. Her breaths came in short, painful bursts. Her fingers shook so badly she could hardly keep them pressed against the ground. It felt as if everything had collapsed at once. Tessa's message, Mark's cruelty, the new wedding he was already planning, the way he'd spoken to her like she was an anchor he needed to cut loose. Her vision blurred with tears she couldn't hold back. If anyone had walked in then, they would have seen a woman shattered. Quiet genius, loyal wife, discarded dreamer. No one walked in. No one knocked. No one came back for her. Not even the man who had once promised to choose her first. When the first wave of grief loosened its grip, her sobs thinned into ragged breaths. She sat back slowly, wiping her face with trembling fingers. The workshop felt huge and hollow around her, every familiar tool now watching her like a silent witness. The only sound was the ticking of the old wall clock, one she and her father had fixed together when she was 10. She remembered how proud he'd been when she'd adjusted the tiny gear and made the hands move again. Back then, things broke and could be repaired. Now it felt like some things were only meant to break. Her phone lay on the floor beside her. It buzzed suddenly, vibrating against the concrete. She flinched and reached for it. A new email notification lit the screen, this time from the project board's secure channel, the one she'd seen earlier when everything with Mark first spiraled. Project board, mandatory final review, confirmed. Public announcement scheduled in 2 weeks. Emma stared at it, eyes still wet. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, the world would know her name. In 2 weeks, the contract locked in her drawer would become public knowledge. In 2 weeks, there would be no more hiding, not from the industry, not from investors, not from anyone who had ever called her nothing. Her chest tightened, not with pain this time, with something else she'd forgotten she still had. Power. Her work was about to step into the light. Her invention, the modular eco-structural system she had built piece by piece in this room, was about to be announced as the backbone of a $500 million global initiative. The same work Mark mocked as toys. She closed her eyes and memories flickered past like a reel. Nights she stayed up alone, drafting plans while Mark stayed late at work. Nights she heard him come in smelling of unfamiliar perfume. Breakfast where he scrolled through his phone while she hid her sketches under old newspapers. Arguments where he told her to be normal, to give up childish dreams. She had carried the marriage alone. She had carried her dreams alone. She would carry her victory alone too, if she had to. Emma drew in a long breath and pushed herself off the floor. Her legs were unsteady, but something in her eyes had changed. The soft, constant doubt had burned away, leaving a quiet core of steel. Her gaze drifted toward the far corner of the room, where her covered invention stood like a sleeping giant. She walked to it slowly, fingertips tracing along the fabric before she lifted it halfway. The smooth, interlocking panels caught the light, their lines clean, deliberate, and strong, just like the mind that had designed them, a system the world had already accepted, a system Mark had never even bothered to ask about. Emma's reflection appeared faintly in the polished surface. Red eyes, tear-streaked face, jaw trembling. And yet, beneath it all, something unbroken. She rested her palm on the metal. "Let them think I'm nothing," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but the words came out with the weight of a vow. "Let them all think it." Her mouth tightened into a small, determined line. "They'll know soon enough." The workshop lights hummed overhead, steady and familiar, as if agreeing. Her phone buzzed again, short, sharp, unexpected. A new message from an unknown number. No preview, just one word. Urgent. Emma stared at it, thumb hovering. Part of her wanted to throw the phone across the room. Another part of her, the part that had learned to read danger and opportunity in the same heartbeat, knew this was one more piece of the storm she couldn't avoid forever. Inside that unopened message waited news that would pull her out of hiding and place her on a stage where the whole world would finally see her. The flash of cameras hit Emma like a wave, bright, relentless, almost blinding. Reporters shouted her name from every direction, microphones lifted like reaching hands. The noise swelled across the conference hall, pressing against years of quiet she had learned to live in. For a heartbeat, she just stood there, blinking, her mind struggling to catch up with what her life had become. Behind her, on the stage, stood the fully assembled modular eco-structural system, sleek interlocking panels rising into a complete structure. The banner above it read, Global Eco-Infrastructure Initiative Lead Engineer, Emma L. Hayes. 2 weeks had passed since that night on the workshop floor. 2 weeks since Mark's divorce papers. 2 weeks since Tessa's text staking her claim. 2 weeks since the board email that had ended her hiding. Just hours earlier today, she had stood in front of a mirror, adjusting a simple blazer with trembling hands, wondering if the girl who once built crooked bridges from scrap wood could really belong here. And now the world was watching her. The board director, Mr. Collins, a calm man in his 50s with silver hair and steady eyes, motioned her forward to the podium. He had been the one to push her design into the final evaluation round, the one who had seen beyond her quiet voice. Today, his voice rang across the hall, we present the mind behind the most advanced modular eco-structural system in the industry, a system that will change how we build, where we build, and who can afford safe, sustainable housing. Applause exploded, loud, echoing, almost unreal. Emma stepped up to the microphone. Her hands were still unsteady, but her spine straightened with each step. She wasn't used to being seen. Her life had been spent at drafting tables, not on stages, in shadows, not in lights. But here she was. As the cameras clicked and flashed, she inhaled slowly. She remembered every night Mark had rolled his eyes at her work. Every time he called it a phase, every snide comment about real jobs, every moment he'd made Tessa feel like an upgrade. Those memories no longer felt like chains. They felt like fuel. Thank you, she began, her voice calm and clear through the speakers. Thank you for believing that innovation can come from small garages and quiet workshops, for believing that ideas built in silence can still speak loudly to the world. The room listened. Her invention gleamed behind her, proof of everything she'd fought for. The world, for the first time, wasn't laughing, it was listening. After the press conference, she moved through clusters of industry leaders and investors. Your design is extraordinary. Decades ahead, you've changed how we'll respond to disasters. We'd like to partner with your company. Emma shook hands, nodded, smiled politely. Part of her felt like she was watching someone else, another woman with her name, her face, her brilliance, but none of her scars. Across the hall, a row of screens played the live broadcast. On one of those screens in a busy restaurant across town, Mark Hayes froze. He had been mid-laugh, a fork halfway to his mouth, holding the attention of a few friends as he bragged about plans with Tessa, where they'd honeymoon once the divorce was finalized, how free he'd feel once everything with Emma was over. At their table, Tessa scrolled through her phone, only half listening. The TV above the bar cut to breaking news. And in a stunning victory, engineer Emma Hayes has secured a $500 million contract as lead designer for the Global Eco-Infrastructure Initiative. Mark's hand went slack. The fork clattered onto his plate. On the screen, Emma shook hands with international partners, her posture straight, her expression composed, cameras flashing all around her. Tessa glanced up, annoyed at the sudden silence, then froze too. Wait, she breathed. Is that your Emma? Mark leaned forward, eyes wide, color draining from his face. That's Emma? He said her name like he hadn't known her at all. Like the woman on the screen and the woman in his memories were two different people. The banner below the broadcast left no room for doubt. Local engineer Emma Hayes wins $500 million contract. At the corner of the screen, the footage showed her standing beside Mr. Collins, fielding questions from global media like she'd been doing it all her life. Tessa's gaze slid sideways to Mark, suspicion sparking. You didn't mention, she said softly, that your ex was this Emma. He couldn't answer. His mouth was dry. His thoughts were a mess of disbelief and panic. Emma, miles away, felt a strange chill run over her skin as she left the stage and stepped into a quieter hallway. She couldn't explain it, but something in the air had shifted, as if one chapter had just slammed shut and another had opened, whether she wanted it or not. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from an unknown number, the same one that had sent urgent days earlier. Unknown. He knows now. As Emma stared at the message, somewhere in a different part of the city, the foundation of Mark's carefully built new life was already beginning to crack. The shouting began before the sun fully rose. Mark Hayes slammed his office door hard enough to shake the framed certificates on the wall. His voice carried into the hallway, angry, desperate, frayed with a fear he rarely admitted he felt. "What do you mean my accounts are frozen?" he snapped. Across the desk, his boss, Mr. Landon, a strict man in his late 40s, whose patience had been worn thin over the years, rested his hands on a thick stack of printed reports. He didn't bother looking impressed or sympathetic. "It means," Mr. Landon said evenly, "that the company's internal audit flagged irregularities in your expense reports. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, travel claims that don't match your schedules. Some of these never had prior approval. Some of these," he tapped a page, "were submitted during days you weren't even on the road." Mark's heart lurched. "That's a misunderstanding. I can explain." "You'll have the chance to explain to HR and the finance committee," Mr. Landon cut in. "But as of this morning, pending investigation, your employment is terminated and your corporate accounts are frozen." The word hit like a blow. Terminated. He swallowed hard, throat suddenly dry. "You can't just—" "We can," Mr. Landon said, finally meeting his eyes. "You've been warned before about blurring personal and business expenses. We now have evidence you ignored those warnings. Some of these transactions," he slid a highlighted page across, "are at hotels near your home, on days you told us you were meeting out-of-town suppliers." The hotel names glared up at him, the same ones from his nights with Tessa. Mark's pulse hammered. Security was called. Procedure. "Nothing personal," the guard said, almost bored. He was walked through the open office in a silence thicker than any applause he'd ever bragged about. Conversations hushed as he passed. Phones lowered. "Did you hear?" someone whispered. "They caught him faking expenses. Always knew there was something off. Didn't his ex-wife help him with his old proposals?" He kept his head down. By the time he reached his car, his hands were shaking. His phone buzzed. For a brief, stupid moment, he hoped it was Emma. Then he remembered the courtroom date on his calendar, the way she had stared through him after the press conference had aired on every screen in town. He pulled out the phone. It was from Tessa. "Tessa, I saw the news from your office. Fired? Accounts frozen?" Another message followed faster this time. "I told you I wanted stability, Mark. I didn't leave my safe life to babysit a man who can't keep his job." His chest tightened. He typed, "We'll figure it out. It's temporary. I still have savings." Her reply cut through him. "Your accounts are being investigated. That means my name gets dragged in too. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for the man who looked like he had it all together." A pause. "Don't come over tonight. I need space." He stared at the screen, disbelief turning to panic. First his job, now his upgrade. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel, but the only thing that changed was the ache in his hand. His mind flashed back to the restaurant TV. Emma in tailored blazer and calm confidence, shaking hands with leaders. A banner announcing her $500 million contract. Reporters calling her visionary. The woman he'd walked away from. The woman he'd mocked as nothing. He drove without thinking, his body on autopilot while his mind scrambled. Streets blurred, traffic lights changed. Eventually he ended up on a road his car remembered, even when his pride wouldn't. Emma's street. He slowed in front of her house, smaller than he remembered, yet somehow more solid than anywhere he'd been in weeks. He got out and walked up the path with unsteady steps, his once easy swagger gone. He knocked, not with the arrogance of a man demanding answers, but with the desperation of someone whose excuses had finally run out. The door opened. Emma stood there in a simple sweater and jeans, hair pulled back, no makeup. Her face was calm, too calm. Seeing her like that made his chest twist. "Emma," he said, breathless. She looked at him, expression neither cold nor warm, just distant. Detached, as if she'd finally stepped out of a fog and was seeing him clearly for the first time. He swallowed hard. "I made a mistake. I know that now. I didn't understand what I had." His voice scraped. I saw you on the news. You're incredible. You're, you're brilliant. You always were. I was just too stupid to see it. Silence stretched between them. He stepped closer. Please, just give me a chance. Let me fix this. Let me come home. The faint hum of the workshop's lights filtered from the back of the house. The same room he once dismissed as a place for toys. Emma inhaled slowly. Her voice was quiet but firm when she finally spoke. The court will handle everything. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. They weren't cruel. They were final. Before he could speak again, she closed the door gently. The latch clicked. Mark stared at the wood grain, feeling the weight of everything he'd thrown away, pressing down on his shoulders like a collapsing roof. Inside, Emma leaned against the door for one long, steady breath. Not a breath of revenge, just release. Her phone buzzed on the hallway table. She picked it up. A new message from Ms. Grant, her lawyer. We're ready for tomorrow. Bring all documents, especially anything related to his expenses. This will go in your favor. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance, not outside but inside the life Mark had tried to build. Tomorrow's courtroom wouldn't just finalize their separation. It would expose secrets he never imagined she already knew. The tension in the courtroom was so thick it felt like a wall. Mark Hayes walked in and felt every pair of eyes turn toward him. Whispers fluttered through the benches like restless birds. A few people grabbed their phones, pretending not to stare, failing horribly. He had once loved being the center of attention. Today, it made him feel sick. Emma was already seated at the plaintiff's table beside her lawyer, Ms. Grant, a sharp-minded woman in her early 40s whose calm silence could cut deeper than any insult. Emma sat straight, her posture relaxed but unshakable. She looked nothing like the woman he'd last seen crying over his betrayal. There was a quiet strength in her now that unsettled him more than anger ever could. He took his place at the defense table next to his own lawyer, who had dark circles under his eyes and a stack of papers that didn't look nearly as thick as Ms. Grant's. Tessa slipped in a moment later, in a fitted dress and carefully styled hair. She took a seat behind Mark, trying to look supportive, but her expression wavered. The confidence that once glittered in her eyes now dimmed by the shadow of his firing and the investigation around his spending. The bailiff called the court to order. Everyone stood as Judge Reynolds entered, a man in his 60s with clear, tired eyes and a reputation for hating lies more than anything else. He settled into his chair, adjusted his glasses, and spoke. Be seated. We are here today to address the financial and legal matters arising from the former marriage of Emma Louise Hayes and Mark Daniel Hayes. Former. The word sliced through Mark's chest with more precision than he expected. Ms. Grant rose first. Your Honor, she began, voice smooth and controlled. We will present evidence of financial misconduct, emotional neglect, and deliberate misuse of marital assets by Mr. Hayes during the course of this marriage and during the separation process. She opened a file so thick it made Mark's stomach drop. Screens lit up on the courtroom walls. The first set of documents appeared, bank statements from Emma and Mark's joint accounts, lines of withdrawals, transfers to Mark's personal account, charges that didn't match the ordinary expenses of their life together. Here we see funds transferred out without Mrs. Hayes' knowledge, Ms. Grant said, many occurring shortly before hotel and restaurant charges on Mr. Hayes' corporate card, now under investigation by his former employer. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Mark shifted in his seat, heat creeping up his neck. His lawyer started to rise. Judge Reynolds raised a hand. You'll have time for response, counsel. Let her finish. Next slid onto the screen. Itemized reports from his company's audit, hotel stays, bar tabs, luxury purchases, dates and locations that matched the messages Emma had once received from anonymous numbers. All of these, Ms. Grant continued, were filed as company expenses. The investigation, however, found no legitimate business purpose for a significant portion of them. A different document appeared, screenshots of text messages between Mark and Tessa during those trips, flirtation, hotel room numbers, jokes about Emma never suspecting a thing. And then, in harsh, fluorescent letters on screen, one of Tessa's messages. She still thinks he's loyal. It's adorable. A few people in the gallery gasped. Tessa's face drained of color. She shrank into her seat, eyes fixed on the floor. Ms. Grant didn't look at her. She turned another page. Additionally, she said, we submit evidence that Mrs. Hayes supported Mr. Hayes's career while he dismissed and ridiculed her own, including emails where she rewrote his proposals and improved his presentations. Work he later claimed credit for solely. This goes to the imbalance of contribution within the marriage. More emails appeared. Emma's patient edits, improved drafts, gentle reminders of deadlines. Judge Reynolds' jaw tightened. Finally, Ms. Grant clicked to a testimonial letter. This is from an engineer who worked with Emma's late father, she explained. He confirms that Mrs. Hayes's project, the one now publicly valued at $500 million, was developed independently, long before the separation, and that Mr. Hayes never participated in its design, funding, or construction. It is her separate intellectual property and was repeatedly dismissed by Mr. Hayes as toys. Emma kept her gaze steady, hands folded in front of her. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Reynolds said, looking at her over his glasses, is this accurate? Did you intend to hide this project from your husband? Emma spoke for the first time that morning. I didn't hide it to punish him, Your Honor, she said softly. I was bound by a non-disclosure agreement, and I had learned over time that sharing my work with him did not bring support, only belittling. She paused. I chose to protect my project and myself. The judge studied her for a moment, then nodded once. He turned to Mark. Mr. Hayes, do you wish to respond? Mark struggled to his feet. His hands were clammy. His throat felt tight. I didn't mean for things to go this far, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I was under pressure. I made mistakes. I thought I was entitled to some comfort. I didn't know. He glanced at the screens, at his own words staring back at him in pixelated shame. I didn't know she'd ever become this successful, he finished weakly. The admission hung heavy in the air. Judge Reynolds exhaled slowly. Success does not determine a person's right to respect, he said evenly, nor does it excuse the misuse of shared resources for personal indulgence. He shuffled the papers in front of him, then spoke with crisp finality. Based on the evidence, this court finds that Mr. Hayes engaged in repeated financial misconduct, misappropriation of marital funds, and emotional neglect. All marital claims to Mrs. Hayes's company, intellectual property, and related revenue are denied. Mr. Hayes is ordered to provide restitution for misused funds and relinquishes any right to further claim spousal support. Gasps broke out in the gallery. Tears pooled in Emma's eyes, but they were not from grief. They were from release. The court, Judge Reynolds added, voice softening, acknowledges Mrs. Hayes's substantial contributions to Mr. Hayes's career and the undue criticism she endured while quietly building her own. The gavel struck. Mark collapsed back into his chair, hands covering his face as the walls of his life closed in. Behind him, Tessa leaned forward, her voice low and cold near his ear. I'm not going down with you, she whispered. She stood, grabbed her purse, and walked briskly out of the courtroom without looking back. Mark lifted his head just in time to watch her leave. Emma rose slowly. She gathered her papers, her posture calm, her dignity intact. Outside those courtroom doors, the world and the media were already waiting. As Emma stepped into the hallway, a reporter approached her, microphone trembling slightly. Mrs. Hayes, she said quietly, there's a private investigator asking to speak with you. He says he's the one who sent you those early warnings about your ex-husband, and he has one last file you might want to see. The door to the new research facility slid open with a soft hiss, and bright white light spilled across the polished floor. Emma stepped through, carrying the same blueprint tube she'd used since the days her designs were nothing more than pencil sketches on thin paper. Now those sketches had grown into contracts, buildings, and a name the industry knew. This space, this entire facility, was hers. The scent of fresh paint and clean steel filled the air. Her footsteps echoed in the wide open room, each quiet tap a reminder of how far she'd walked to reach this place, from a cramped workshop behind a house where she was mocked, to a sprawling center built around her vision. For the first time in a long time, her heart wasn't pinched with doubt or bruised with someone else's cruelty. It felt steady, full. She paused in the center of the main lab and turned slowly. Workstations waited along the walls, ready for the engineers she would someday hire. Display tables held prototypes in various stages, some refined, some rough, some that still bore the stubborn imperfections of ideas in progress. Her inventions no longer hid under sheets in a back room. They stood in the open under bright lights, recognized for what they were. Her father's voice drifted through her memory. One day, they'll pay you for the way your mind works, not the way you look, not for how quiet you stay, not for how much you shrink to make others comfortable. He had been right. Across the nearest table, an early version of her modular panel system lay beside the latest iteration. The evolution was clear, rough beginnings smoothed into elegant strength. She exhaled slowly, all the years flashing through her mind. Mark calling her work toys, Tessa's mockery echoing in hallways. Divorce papers thrown at her like trash, anonymous messages warning her of betrayal, the NDA that forced her to hold her tongue, the press conference where the world finally listened, the courtroom where the truth stood taller than his excuses. He had left her convinced she was nothing. She had become more than he could ever comprehend. Emma ran her fingers along the edge of a panel, watching her reflection shift slightly in the metal. Older, stronger, eyes carrying both history and hope. I didn't crush them with anger, she said quietly. I crushed them just by becoming who I was always meant to be. Silence settled comfortably around her. Through the glass wall at the far end of the facility, morning light poured in, casting clean lines across the floor. This was no longer a hallway she was being pushed down by someone else's choices. It was a path she had built herself. She walked toward the large glass doors, each step measured but relaxed. When she approached, the sensors triggered. The doors slid open for her, then closed gently behind her, like the soft, permanent closing of a chapter that had once nearly broken her. Outside, the world waited, not to doubt her, but to work with her, to invest in her, to build with her. Somewhere in her pocket, her phone buzzed, a small, insistent vibration. She pulled it out, a new email. Sender, H. Lawson, Private Investigations. The subject line, Final Report. You owe yourself this closure. Emma stared at it for a moment. There had been a time when she would have opened it instantly, desperate for every detail of what Mark had done, every betrayal uncovered. Now she felt something else. Curiosity, yes, but not desperation. Not pain. She smiled faintly and slipped the phone back into her pocket. She would read it later, on her terms, in her time. Right now she had a facility to open, a team to build, and a future to design, one that no longer revolved around proving anything to a man who had already lost. She stepped fully into the light, free, fulfilled, and finally whole. Her story with Mark Hayes was legally closed, but the choices he had made would keep teaching lessons long after their names were no longer spoken together. Lessons for anyone who ever looked at a quiet partner and mistook silence for weakness instead of undiscovered power. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.